Strong-willed kids get a lot of messages about who they are and how difficult they are as people out in the world. And so today we're going to talk about the 3 things that your children need at home so that they can feel really comfortable and confident in themselves and really thrive, whatever that looks like for your child. So if we think about the messages that strong-willed kids get out in the world, they get told things like they're difficult, that they are stubborn, that they're selfish. They get and even like too intense, like you're too much. There's lots of these messages that we get as strong-willed people, and I say we because I'm one too. There's lots of messages that the world gives us. Now, some pockets of the world will say things like strong-willed people are really valuable, but they're difficult to be with interpersonally, and that's not really true either, but I want to really dig into what that means. But if we think about, for our strong-willed kids, what they need from home, because they are unlikely to get it many other places, we're talking about 3 things. So the first thing is that they're not inherently difficult. So their personality is not difficult. And this may be tricky to hear because you're currently living with one or more of them, and maybe it feels inherently difficult. But really, when we think about what kids really are when they're strong-willed, it's what it is that they are unwilling to be selfless. And so if you're unwilling to be selfless, that can make things appear difficult when we don't have the communication skills and the emotional awareness to be able to work through problems in a collaborative way. And so for a strong-willed kid, there's a lot of messages about how they are inherently difficult to be around. And there's a lot of posts and memes that go around social media that say things like, some of us are raising the change makers, and I apologize for my tone because I struggle with the message, but I don't mean to say that if you felt strongly positive towards these messages that there isn't something of value in there, but I struggle with the message, and so I apologize for my tone. But it's like, some of us are raising the change makers and we wouldn't change them for the world. But when you boil down the message is, my child is horrible to live with, but I do it because I see the value in them and I love them for who they are. I don't like that message. And I think it also comes with a bit of, I have to sacrifice my happiness in order for them to be whole, in order for them to be happy, in order for them to be fully themselves. I have to be unhappy, and I'm totally willing to do it. And I don't like that message. I don't like it at all. These are the messages. So if you can imagine, like, the world is saying you're difficult and you're a problem, and your parents are saying you're difficult, but I love you so much. The common denominator is that you're difficult, that you are a difficult person to be around, you're a difficult person to love, you're just difficult. And so we want to, in our children's homes, we want to give them the message that they are not difficult, that there's 2 reasons that they will be being what people call difficult. One is that they're not actually clear on what they need. Because when they're asking for the toast to be cut 7 different ways and changing their mind even though they got what they asked for, when they are refusing to wear an outfit that is clean because the one they want is dirty, when they, like, all of these things, whatever the thing is that they're being really strong-willed about, if they were clear on what that really meant to them, like why it was important for them, then they would be able to see that there are a million ways that they could get that need met. So then this one particular issue becomes less critical, less desperate, because we've got all these options, and maybe some of them are unrealistic right now, maybe some of them we just can't do, but there are options. And so the first thing we want to say to our child is that, and not necessarily directly, but in all of our interactions, is like, when you're feeling like you cannot give in, that's a clue that you're not clear on what the issue is for you. So then the second thing that people assume strong-willed kids are difficult about, but it's actually a positive aspect, is that strong-willed kids are not willing to accept poor outcomes. Like, our society teaches people that you should be able to accept things not going your way to the point that it's actually not healthy. Like, you should be able to accept that some people cannot afford to eat, even though we have so much money and so much food as a society. Some people just can't eat. Like, that's just the way it goes. Some people don't get access to the health services that are available to them. That's just the way it goes. Now, our strong-willed kids, they, obviously they're not dealing with those issues, but like the issues that they're facing, they're just like, no, I'm not getting a reason that is satisfying me that I should accept a poor outcome. I'm not going to do it. And so we don't want to give them the message that they should learn to accept poor outcomes. What we want to give them the message is that just because we can't fix it this time doesn't mean we can't fix it next time. So keep a hold of the fire, but don't burn yourself out in this one so that you're not ready to keep looking for the better outcome the next time, right? Like, hold on to that. And B, you need to get good at problem solving. Like, you need to as a strong-willed person, you need to get good at. It's not enough just to put your foot, dig your heels in and say, that's not good enough. It's time for you to get in and start problem solving. So for them, so you can see how the message to them is, you're not inherently difficult. If you're being stubborn, then it's time to get clearer on what it is that you want. And rather than just not accepting poor outcomes, you need to build your skill set in terms of accepting poor outcomes. You need to build your skill set in terms of problem solving. So the next thing that our strong-willed kids need to learn at home is that they have the capacity to prioritize other people's needs as well as their own. And this is a lot easier if they've learned how to do the first steps, like they've learned how to get really clear on what the actual issue is for themselves and they've learned how to problem solve. Then it becomes much easier to take on other people's needs and priorities. Now you can see how the same goes for other people, is that often they're not clear on what is actually the thing that's really important to them. And often, for us as strong-willed people, it can be very easy to either dismiss people's surface level issues because they just are not logical or it doesn't make sense, or, I know better than you. Like, that is a very easy trap to fall into. So we need to really get practice for our strong-willed kids to notice that if other people are seemingly illogical, that means we're not clear on what's really important to them. If other people are not, there's another part of this, it's actually making it safe for other people to tell you what they need. So for some people, they will find it intimidating for somebody who is so strong in themselves. It is difficult for some people to be able to say, well, hey, this is what I need. And so we need for our strong-willed children to be able to balance between, and it's not balance, it's actually achieve two things at once. It is knowing how to show up fully as yourself, but in a way that doesn't take up all of the airspace for everybody else. In a way that really leaves space for other people and really gets them to know that it is safe to tell you what they really need. Now, in truth, across society, there's not that many emotionally healthy people. That's just what we're dealing with right now. And so we want to raise our kids in a way that they know how to, it's not that we raise them in a way that they expect everybody else to be emotionally healthy. But what we do want to do is raise them to, there's a difference between someone who's emotionally unhealthy that can, when you show up in a healthy way, they can meet you and the relationship can be healthy because you've made it safe, because it is different to the other, difficult dynamics that happen between people, right? There's a difference between those people and the people who are so unhealthy that the relationship is not going to work. And that, whether that's friendships, whether it's intimate relationships, whether it's working relationships, all those things. We want our kids to know, where is the line between making it safe for somebody to bring their full selves to the table and overstepping where we're overcompensating for somebody who is not willing to really show up in the relationship. So that's another, obviously these are small sentences, well, none of my sentences are small, but these are small things that I'm tapping over, but they're actually really deep skill-based and values-based things. These are things that happen over time and we practice and we really embed these mindsets in our kids. And we also, in that space, we also want to know that our children know how to handle when other people, so often when strong-willed kids are very big in a social space, people will often criticize their personality when what they really mean is there's no space for me, right? And we want our kids to know that when someone says, you're just difficult, or you're just stubborn, or you talk too much, or all of these things that they say, we want them to be able to translate that into what it really means. So when teachers say to them, you talk too much, and our kids are like, Mrs. Thornton says I talk too much, what we want to do is help them to translate it. So based on what was happening at that moment, what do you think Mrs. Thornton was worried about? Was she worried about getting through the lesson? Did she have a headache? Did she, we're teaching them to translate what other people are saying into something that is factual and not about their personality, because it's never about their personality. It is about the general lack of social skills, communication skills, and emotional awareness in our society, right? We want our strong-willed kids to have a really strong sense that if someone is criticizing our personality, that they are trying to say something, it is not about your personality. It's possibly that they feel like they can't get a word in. It's possibly that they needed you to stop talking. It's possibly that they don't have a solution. And, maybe it's that they don't believe that solutions are as easy as you do. So how do we get you to continue to work through that? Really, really focusing on that problem-solving focus. Then the last thing that strong-willed kids really need from home is this sense of getting to know their inner selves. So it's very easy for a strong-willed kid to get payoff from things that are not necessarily deeply fulfilling. So the payoff might be something like, I get to do a lot of talking, or my opinion is valued, or even I don't have to focus on others, I just can focus on myself, or even I can solve the problem, right? So strong-willed kids might get payoff from all these things because those are things that we really value. And when we miss that, actually we're not following our inner selves, that's where, if you think about those times in life where we can realize we've been down this path that is actually not fulfilling, that's the risk for strong-willed kids, is that they get stuck in this space of, isn't it great that I get to do lots of talking, or isn't it great that my opinion is respected, isn't it great that I get to solve the problems, or isn't it great that, I get to really, I can't remember what the fourth example I used, but I had my vaccination a couple of days ago, and I'm a bit blanky today. But the point being that they can get, and because they can get so single-minded about sticking with something until it's fixed, it can be easy for them to get down a path where they realise this is not actually working for me. So they're doing something because they refuse to give up, or they're doing something because it's giving that surface level payoff that is not actually giving them that deep sense of fulfillment. So how do we focus on this? We're talking things like, how much space is in their day? Like, if you look at their whole day, where would they get space to just be and not be consumed by something? And I don't want you to stress if your lifestyle is such a way that right now this is not possible. We just want to have an intention to create it in the future. We don't need to stress if we can't do it. And it can even be how you do your bedtime routine, but we just want to look for how much space does your child get just to let things bubble up, just to notice, hey, what would be exciting? That kind of stuff, rather than just that compulsive do, or rush. So we really want to look for some space. We also want to look like really processing their emotions. So when something comes up that frustrates them, we want them to be able to unpack it as they go, so they're not picking up baggage and they're not making meaning where that meaning's kind of a little bit off from what is happening. So you want to have times, at least, again, it's not something to stress about if you don't have the capacity now. We do it step by step, but we want to aim to get to a place where you're doing this at least a few times a week, if not multiple times a day, where they're actually working through, someone spoke to me poorly at school, how do I unpack that? I don't like how daddy spoke to me last night, how do I unpack that? And really getting to the place where there's they can understand why they feel the way they feel, they can have some concern and compassion for the other person, but maintain their boundaries, that they need to look after themselves and look for ways for it to work for both people, and really getting into that place where they can do it themselves. So the more you practice, the better it is for them. And then the other thing, so StrongWilled kids can get fixated on this like one-track mind, it's got to be this one thing. The other thing that can happen is that they can get overwhelmed by all the possible options. And so then it becomes really tuning into, when does their body feel lit up and when do they feel in flow? So we want to look for these two things. So, and you're talking about your children regularly and you're creating this opportunity regularly. So there's two places I look like, is that place where you feel like that, you know, that buzz of like, this is what I want to be doing with my time, that we want them to know what that feeling feels like, and we want to notice when it happens for them. The second thing we want to look for is, when are they completely relaxed? When are they just, you know, and we want to look for, when does it happen for them? What does it feel like when it happens for them? How can they get it more frequently? So those are the things. So we talked about, this has been a big conversation, but I think it's really important, because I think these are the things that make a big difference for a strong-willed child's life, is to really have the strength in these things at home. And this is what will really set them up to be able to create a life that they love, and also like to follow their unique path, whatever that's going to be. And you know, strong-willed children, they're almost guaranteed to be change makers. The question is whether they're going to be change makers on a small scale or a large scale, and also which one is more appropriate for their personal, you know, everybody has their personal way to be in the world. Just because they're a strong-willed child doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be, you know, destined for big change in the world. But there are places where these things can help your child to really create that unique path for themselves. So if you need help with any of this, please feel free to reach out. So we could work together over 6 months to really map out where does your child need to focus on right now? What do we need to do to make that happen? Including, what do you need to feel like relaxed and confident that you're not sacrificing, but you are supporting. And we find a way to make that work so that your personal path is not negatively impacted, because it doesn't need to be. It's always a way to make it work. We just need to, no matter what happens, we just need to find a way. There's always a way to make it work, no matter what your circumstances are. So if you would like to work with me on that over 6 months, we can do that together. If you book a conversation at jodithornton.com/15, we can have that's a 15-minute chat. We can just have a conversation about, where are you at with your child? What do they need? What are the priorities that they need in the near future? And we can map out what we would do together over those 6 months. And then if you'd like to go ahead, that package is 1,895 Australian dollars. Thank you so much for listening. And please let me know if there are any questions you have about this concept, because there's a lot of big topics that I covered today. I'd really like to know if there's any of these that you'd like me to dig into more detail. I can do that in another video. Thanks so much.